Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 11th of June, and joining me on this edition, Kaz Harlow.
I hate being right all the time.
Ed Selley.
God help us, we're in the hands of engineers.
And Mark Botwright.
Clever girl.
Welcome back to the podcast. You'll have noticed that there is a prominent member of the team missing this week. He's gone on holiday, and he was busy tweeting about how the frogs were keeping him awake at night. And as you can see, we're all sympathetic to that cause, Steve. So enjoy your holiday.
Well, I mean, he seems happy enough. I mean, essentially, you know the rules of social media. If you're somewhere nice, especially if someone else is paying for it, you need to point out that you're somewhere nice and someone else is paying for it. You know, yeah. My own social media feed has been very bereft of these recently. I've keenly felt it. Although I am off to Paris later this month. So,
oh yeah, what are you doing in Paris?
I don't know. I've been invited along by Ellipson, but they have been fairly limited on what we're actually going to do when we get there. So I'm hoping that means jolly.
Those are usually the best ones. I mean, Steve's on a Denon and Marantz dealer week, and that's normally just half an hour of work and the rest of the time enjoying yourself. So
are they cut back on the 400 slide PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, it's usually just half an hour's work nowadays, and then you get a bit of a jolly, which is why I'm jealous, basically. And he's in Alicante, and it looks gorgeous. So
well, there you go. You know, I'm in Olney. It's brightening up. So it could be worse.
What we've been up to this week, Mr. Botwright, what have you been doing? Any pottery?
No. I went to Legoland instead. So
right.
that was
with that.
Nah, that was my big excursion of the week.
Does it still have a lot of wasps?
I honestly didn't notice any. I'll be perfectly honest.
Because at one stage it was a debate as to whether humans or wasps were the dominant species at Legoland. There were a lot of them. It was quite something. But I'm glad to hear that's improved.
No, that has improved. But it's one of those places where you can tell everything revolves around the gift shop.
Yes.
They've got about 5 gift shops, and they're strategically placed after kids have been into like the Ninjago world or something like that. And you always know when they're the most slick part of the whole experience. Yeah. You know, there's like no one around on one of the food stalls, but there's about 20 people all flock in to man the tills, just to like 5 to 5.
I'll tell you what. There's a Lego store in the Metro Centre. I had an hour to kill before the cinema yesterday, so I went and had a look in because I had some nice Star Wars stuff in the window. £650 for a Lego set. You got to be joking.
Well, they were selling one of the giant Millennium Falcons for that, actually, on a special offer. And I was thinking, when I was seeing the amount of people flock there to the tills, I was just thinking, why would anyone rob banks anymore? These are the places to go. The amount of money they must have taken in that, just like the half hour before closing, would have been phenomenal.
Is this another Kickstarter plan that you've got going?
Well, yeah.
You see, for me, I admire the fact that Lego has stayed relevant. It's doing well. We should. I don't wish to be anything other than positive about that. But I mean, I've got at my parents' house a huge box of Lego, some of which dates back to the 70s. And I have to say, the modern kits where you open it and they're just full of parts which have been done specifically for that kit, and it's not the same as it was.
Lego,
go on.
Lego have been very kind of vocal on this kind of issue, that they claim that they're making no more specific parts than they've ever done before, and that it's kind of it's selective memory, and everyone's just saying that they're all like that. But yeah, it does seem very much like that when you get some of the kits. But then there's loads of stuff which you can clearly see is just blocks and pieces that you've used 1,000 times before.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you have to take your hats off to them. Although it is a very strange place, Legoland. There are some things that make sense. You're going around Star Wars, place or something like that, and then you just turn around and there's like a 20-foot tall Lego giraffe wearing shoes and with lipstick or something, and there's no explanation as to what it's doing there.
Maybe the blocks made it themselves. It's like Westworld.
But they've become sentient.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, as a kid, I went to the because we were living in Germany at the time. We went to the one in Denmark, which was, I don't think it was anything quite as slick. I mean, it was really just a group of people who genuinely loved making things out of Lego, who'd made a lot of things out of Lego. It didn't have quite the same. I'm sure by now that they've got the capitalism up and running, but back then it was delightfully twee, and I seem to remember bastard cold, but that's Denmark. So that's fair enough. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So welcome along to the AVForums podcast for Lego this week. Kaz, what have you been up to other than watching films?
I spent an inordinate amount of time stuck on the motorway. I couldn't get off the M4. They shut out all the exits, and I had to drive in the wrong direction for like 20 miles just to get to another exit and then turn around and come back. It's not really how you want to spend your time. I think I spent 4 hours on the motorway on a day when I hadn't really planned on spending any time. It wasn't great.
And you didn't watch a film while you were stuck in the traffic?
No, I haven't.
I was going to say, I was expecting him to say, I knocked out 4 reviews in that time.
Yeah, I haven't quite got the heads-up display going in my old Ford Mondeo yet, but it's tempting to get that installed. I could have certainly boshed a couple of movies during that time.
I've just picked up a little Oculus Go. You could pick one of those up. You could still be reviewing in your car in a traffic jam.
Yeah.
How do you notice when the car ahead of you has moved, Mark?
Is there something legal about that?
Yes.
Yeah,
We need to talk about.
Let me be clear about this. Yes.
Okay.
This is not an incentive for people to try and do this. For the love of all things holy, do not do this.
So we've already told them the best time to rob Legoland, that they should be wearing virtual reality on the motorway. We're really, really public service announcement heavy this week.
Yeah, absolutely. After the podcast last week, I went to the Great Central Railway. It's a preserved steam railway, because I have a 4-year-old son and steam engines are just the coolest things going. And it was great. I have to say, if you live in the vicinity of, it goes from Loughborough to the top of Leicester. So if you're somewhere near that, I had a great day there, really enjoyed it. Halfway through the day, it was a 1940s weekend, and we got to the Leicester end of it, and the train left the station, and then a group of men dressed as British and German soldiers had a pitched battle with, gunfire and everything. It was. Did
you know this was going to happen, or did it take you by surprise?
Well, let me rephrase it. When I went off on the visit, I had no idea that I thought there would be some like vehicles and stuff hanging around. I didn't realize they were going to do that. They did give some warning, which was good because I was able to get some sort of hearing protection together for the boy. But no, it was excellent. I had a genuinely good day. So that was fine. I then had to do a funeral. That was, obviously less enjoyable, as you might understand. Although when it's the funeral of someone who was on the cusp of their 96th birthday, it's fair to say there's not a huge element of tragedy to it. It's not a wholly unexpected event for someone to die at that point. So
the eulogy didn't start with "they were taken too soon."
No, it didn't. In no way, shape, or form. But I thought it was handled very well. I got to get up to Phil's neck of the woods, which I'm always reminded of that parts of it are very, very attractive indeed. I did see a sign for Lanchester on the way up, but we were pushing on to Hexham, so we left Phil where he was. I mean, he had to have got dressed and all sorts of stuff, so we just left him be. Then I've come back, and yes, I've just been sort of trying to get stuff done. Basically, the only thing I did do last night, I stuck it on Twitter. I suddenly realised that Boards of Canada, the Music Has the Right to Children, the first full-length album that they released, is now 20 years old, which made me feel extremely old. But nonetheless, I sat down and listened to it end to end because it is a phenomenal piece of work. So yeah, that was the other thing I did last night.
Excellent, good stuff.
And we saw your photos from Yorkshire. It looks like you had a good time.
Yeah, I've yet to see the Yorkshire Moors. Even though we did the North Yorkshire Moors, I've yet to see them because it was just
visibility looked a little thick.
Yeah, it was down to 15 feet at some points. So, but we went through Heartbeat Country, and as we went through the village where they used to film that TV series, I was at the front or close to the front of the park. There was a Fox body Mustang in front of me, and people would notice that. Then they would notice my car, and then they would suddenly click that there was a whole line of them coming, and people's faces. That's where I get my entertainment, watching people's reactions to the cars coming through their village and that kind of thing. And yeah, it was really entertaining. There was 15 cars in total, everything from a 64 upwards, and it was a beautiful 1970 Mark 1 in silver with black accents, and it looked and sounded phenomenal. And it smelt great as well. And you'll know what I mean, Ed, when I say it smelt great. It was fantastic. It had a Cleveland V8 in it, and it's just a burble you get from the old 1970 V8s. It's something that the new motors just they don't still have. They still have the burble, but they don't have that tick over burble that the older engines do have.
No.
And the timing that they use. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was a really, really good day. And I'm also a Club 10 member now.
Yes, I saw that. At this rate, you will cease to exist by mid of 2019.
Well, actually, I've still got 2 stone to lose. This is the bit that I'm trying to get my head around. So, basically, what Club 10 means is that I've lost 10% of my body weight since January. So, 10%.
Which is seriously impressive.
10% of me now doesn't exist.
Not being facetious for a second, that is a genuine achievement and very impressive. And as it appears to be based around lifestyle changes rather than you sitting eating, brown rice, then long may it continue. Well done.
Thanks very much. Let's yeah. So shall we crack on with the podcast? I think we should. We've got podcast competitions. Who's going to do this? Who's my victim this week? Mark, why don't you do it?
I did it last week.
I'll do it.
Okay, Ed, you do it then.
Right, you can win an SVS SB2000 subwoofer, and that closes on the 29th of June. There is a BenQ TK800 sports and home entertainment projector, which closes on Independence Day, 4th of July. There's a copy of Den of Thieves on Blu-ray, which is open till the 12th of June, and The Mountain of the Cannibal God on Blu-ray, which closed on the 17th of June. That last one, that sounds like quite the film. Is that in the sort of 70s, 80s, done on a budget of 11 pence school of filmmaking, or is that something else altogether?
I think it was 12 pence, but
right.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Italian masterpiece is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm whilst the actual films themselves, I don't particularly like horror and I don't like gore. Some of the soundtracks to those films are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah,
really,
you should
really
watch
good.
It with your eyes shut, basically. Then.
Well, no, but if you want something particularly sad, well, I don't know if this is going to be up your alley, Kaz, but there's one website in particular. There's a lot of these Italian soundtracks have been re-released on vinyl. They're unbelievably expensive, but the artwork alone makes them extremely desirable items. So yeah, they've done a lot of them. I'll have to see if Mountain of the Cannibal God has been added to the roster. So yeah, all good. And just as a minor point, all competitions are open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK. So please don't forget that.
Any previous competition winners?
There are not.
Okay, that's good. So that's competitions done. We'll be back with hardware news in a sec. Okay, so kicking off hardware news, Ed's been looking at a couple of products, and I've looked at a projector, or certainly previewed a projector. So let's go Ed first, with your first product, which is the Naim Unity Star all-in-one system. We've been doing lots of these all-in-ones, so is this a good one?
Realistically, this is the best one. I don't want to be so... half of me doesn't want to be so predictable about this, but as I cover in the review, Naim were one of the early people into this category. It's fair to say that they have had a huge role in shaping and creating what we expect these products to do. Now, that's very good for them because it means they have a recognized place in it, but it does also mean there's a considerable amount of pressure on them to do more. And in the case of the Star, they've gone and done it. Those of you who pay attention to these things will remember that we reviewed the Atom in last year, which is the entry-level member, and it does almost everything you could realistically want at £2,000. So you're sort of thinking, well, why would you spend any more money? And Naim has gone about answering that question in a fairly emphatic way. The Star, first and foremost, you get more power, the ability to drive bigger speakers. There's very few loudspeakers under £5,000 or £6,000 that this product is going to struggle with, so you don't need to worry about that. But what they've gone and done is they've gone and turned the Star into a hub of what could potentially be quite a large system. What it brings to the specification, which is very unusual, and I think puts it in a different place to almost any other all-in-one that we've looked at, is that it has a CD mechanism, which sounds a bit retro, but that can also be used to rip, tag, and store material on the Star itself, either to an external hard drive or just to an SD card. And that sounds a bit ridiculous until you realise some of the capacities of SD cards available for not that much money. You could certainly have all of your ready-use CDs ripped to the Star and then just available via the app. But then, with one eye on the fact that Naim now also, makes the Muso genuine all-in-one systems with the speakers as well, your Star becomes the hub of having other units around the house. Now, as we've joked in the past, where I'm living at the moment, it's not exactly a huge place, but I can have material that the Star has ripped, and I can select it on the app, and then I can send it over to a Muso QB in the kitchen, and it can do it to multiple other devices as well. And as well as being able to do these things, it's able to do them in an incredibly slick and stable way. And it's little things that Naim have got down pat now that sort of make a difference. For example, if I select let's say for the sake of argument, public service broadcasting on list as artists that I have stored on my server, it will bring up all of the albums that I've ripped and tagged as public service broadcasting. But then it will use my Tidal account to fill in anything that I don't have from public service broadcasting that would then be available for the Star to listen to, and then other units on the network as well. It's just beautifully thought out, beautifully realized, and like the Atom, it's finished and designed in a way that, crucially, it doesn't feel like it was made at a cottage industry level. This is a product that's competitive with pretty much anything else being made by any company of any size anywhere. It is an absolutely phenomenal product. And yes, in my reduced circumstances, I suppose it's fair to point out, Naim actually have allowed it to stay here in my granny annex, and it's being used as a piece of review hardware going forward for a couple of months, and it's more than up to the task. It strengthens this statement that I've been making for over a year now. I honestly do not know of a compelling argument to buy separates instead of this unless you are absolutely convinced that you are going to be climbing the ladder and buying more expensive stuff over the coming years. It is that good.
Okay. Who is the customer for this then? Who's it pitched at?
This is an interesting one, because if you had an older separate system and you're sort of looking at, what do I need to do to get it to start streaming, or talking possibly to doing more than one room, gut feeling, get it on, get that on a sales website and just chop in and switch over to this. Alternatively, if you are someone who bought a Muso when that came out a couple of years ago, you could then move your Muso to a different room, and the user and control experience of one of the Unities, be it the Core or the Star, would be absolutely and utterly familiar to you, and the jump in performance is just going to be a genuinely revelatory. It sounds absolutely phenomenal, and yeah, don't get me wrong, it's not inconsequentially expensive, and for a number of people the much more affordable Atom is going to be all the product you ever need, but the Star does make more of a case for itself existing than I thought it might.
Okay, and obviously, we're AV buffs here as well as liking our hi-fi, so if people were downgrading, as we say, or downsizing from 5.1 to 2 channel or 2.1, is this something that you would shove your TV through and so on? Is it? Yes,
it's got an HDMI ARC input, so it can connect directly, and it's really very clever in so much as it has all of the CEC connections going as well. So if I turn my telly off with the Naim running via HDMI, it turns that off as well. And it's been absolutely flawless in terms of how it functions and how it works. So yes, if you are sort of thinking, do I really want to persist with 5.1? The fact that Naim's gone and fitted the HDMI connections. I mean, don't get me wrong, optical will do much the same job sonically, but there is a level of integration that you get from the HDMI connectors and potential future proofing if certain soundtracks became more locked down in the years to come. That's pure hypothesis. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but it does give you some level of possible guard against that. No, it's an absolutely ideal candidate for that. I mean, I do not have a multi-channel system here at the moment. I simply turn the telly on, turn the Naim on, and listen in stereo. But for the most part, that's a genuinely enjoyable experience. So no, it's an absolutely superb product. Probably one of my products of the year so far.
So yeah, big praise indeed for that product. And of course, it is World Cup month, so we're going to be using audio and video technology this month. That's AVers, and I guess if you want to watch football in all its glory with your mates and all the rest of it, there's nothing better than trying to project it on the side of your house if you're having a garden party, or just using a projector. In general, projectors have always been well suited to that kind of thing, and especially DLP projectors, given their motion capabilities. So I've been looking at, or certainly previewing, the TK800 from BenQ. This is a very affordable DLP projector. It's a 4K DLP projector, but it's not true 4K as they say in their brochures and their marketing material. Obviously, it's using the TI chip from Texas Instruments that does the XPR, so it does the flashing of pixels on the screen, so you get 8.3 million pixels. This is the 4 times flash, so it's a smaller chip. It's used in the more budget projectors, which this one is, and certainly it fools the eye into you believing that you are looking at 8.3 million pixels all in one time on the screen, and it's very, very clever technology. Obviously it's restricted in terms of colour, as are most of the DLP projectors at this price point, and most DLP projectors, to be honest, unless they have a laser light source, they're usually restricted to Rec 709 colour space, but that's not an issue if you're going to use this for gaming and for sports viewing. And this is what BenQ are selling the projector as. They call it a sports and home entertainment projector, which normally means that the black levels are rubbish, which they are on this, so don't expect inky blacks or loads of shadow detail. Again, it's a downside of DLP technology, that it's not capable of doing fantastic black levels, but if you're using it as intended, which is a home entertainment projector for watching the occasional movie on the big screen, or watching the World Cup or sports events or Premier League football, you could watch it in 4K if you use the BBC iPlayer app on a standalone device, or if you've got a Sky Q system, you can watch Premier League in 4K. So in those terms, it's bright enough to use in a normal living room, which is white walls, white ceiling, and some ambient light. You could use it outdoors. Put a bed sheet or something up against the side of the house, or if you've got a smooth white side to the house or something like that, you could have a garden party and use the projector. I mean, obviously it's bright, but it's not going to be that bright, so it's still going to look a little bit washed out, but you get the big screen experience. So for £1,195, so £1,200, you get 100 plus inches 4K. It'll take an HDR signal, although projectors can't do HDR really that well. You need to spend a lot of money before you start getting decent HDR on a projector, or pseudo HDR, I should say, to be completely accurate. But again, this is a bright projector. It's supposed to be used for gaming. It's supposed to be used for sports viewing and big screen events, and it's the type of unit, and it's well built that you can unplug it, shove it away in a cupboard, bring it out, set it up for big screen events and that kind of thing. In terms of picture quality, like I say, black levels, and I've only previewed this, so when I say previewed, I'm halfway through reviewing this, so I can't give you all the figures at the minute, but in terms of what it is, the price that it's at, picture quality that I've been looking at, and I've watched Jurassic Park on it, black level's not great, but everything else is really quite nice. And like I say, Rec 709 colour wise, it seems to be around that ballpark in terms of colour accuracy for that. Some colours look a little bit pushed, so I think it's actually maybe pushing the 75%, although I haven't measured it yet. Like I say, it's only been set up a week. It's been... What we tend to do is soak test these, so we like to put some hours on the bulb. I try to put at least 50 hours on the bulb before doing any serious testing of any projector. So yeah. For the money, it looks like it's a cracking little projector. The review will be up very soon, certainly before the World Cup starts. If you feel like having a big screen viewing parties and that kind of thing, I don't think 1,200. It's a lot of money, but I don't think in terms of what you're getting for your money, that it's such a big stretch. I think in terms of value for money, I think it's round about that point, remembering that it has got the new 4K chipset in it, which does the 8.3 million pixels, and certainly fools the eye into thinking that you're getting a nice sharp 4K image. So I don't know about you guys, if you take your sport that seriously, but is it something that you would consider?
I've thought about it in the past. It's interesting the way I'm sort of progressing at the moment. It's perhaps less likely now, but it's one of those things where I think that what you just described there that I think is interesting is that with these products, I don't know if you agree with me on this. The thing that really makes them live or die is whether they're good enough for you to want to use them outside of the sort of eventy, my mates are here and we've all had 18 beers sort of point, where it's still there's enough performance to make them something that you want to have around on a regular basis.
Yeah, what I would say is if you're a cinephile, a videophile, if you're looking for home theatre, blacks and all the rest of it, no, absolutely not. This is not the product for that at all. You're better saving some money, and if you've got a room where you can use a home cinema projector and you're into your movies, that's where I would push you. If you're the type of person, Ed, who wants some big screen gaming with your mates round, watch the World Cup or Sky's Premier League coverage or that kind of thing, you want 4K, if you're not that bothered about picture quality in terms of colour accuracy, wide colour, HDR, that kind of thing, if you just want a nice big image that you can watch TV dramas and sports and that kind of, that's your market, where you don't have the ideal room, you don't have a darkened room, you might even just have a flat white wall that you're pointing this projector at. That's kind of where this really works and is good value for money, in giving you a nice big image that is perfectly watchable. But if you're a cinephile, videophile, it's definitely not for you.
But it's more that it does seem to do enough that you're going to use it. It's going to be something that you can make more regular use of. It's like, I suppose, if you like, projectors, not in an absolute sense, but they're a little bit like barbecues. If it's something which is, you've got lots and lots of people coming over and it's great and so on and so forth, but it's a bit of a pig to light under normal circumstances, and you can't be, and it ends up doing two things a year compared to one that costs a little bit more and it's a little bit better, but you prepared to light it most weekends it's dry because it gives you very predictable results, and projectors appear to be quite similar in that regard.
I love that analogy, Ed. I really do. Sorry, I just wanted to say, when you started saying projectors are like barbecues, I don't know why, but I heard it in the voice of Forrest Gump.
I was actually thinking more like Hank Hill, because propane and propane accessories. But no, I know it's an odd metaphor, an odd comparison to make, but I think there is definite mileage to it. Where I think I completely agree with you that you have to choose the sum of money that means it's not going to be something that sees you use it once, you realise it's a bit of a faff, or it doesn't quite meet your expectations, and it goes and lives in a box for the next 6 years. You hit the point where it becomes something that you make regular and happy use of.
Yeah, and of course, what I'm describing there in terms of usage for this projector, or use case for the projector, there are a lot cheaper models from BenQ and other manufacturers that cost half this projector, but they're only HD. They only do 1080. So you would go for this one if you want the upgrade of the 4K, or certainly the 8.3 million pixels on screen, the way it does it with a really fast mirror flashing and so on, where it flashes the image. And this one does it 4 times. There are drawbacks, but I guess if you're looking at this type of projector and you're in that use case, then the drawbacks don't count for you. And the drawbacks are really poor black levels, not a lot of shadow detail, retrieval in a dark room, that kind of thing. I mean, I tested it in the cinema room that I have here, which is basically a black hole, and that just shows up all the drawbacks of this technology, because it's not really designed for that type of room. And like I say, if that's the type of room that you have and you want to go for a home theatre projector, you need to save a little bit more money and look at something completely different to this. This is for using it in the living room with your mates round, onto a white wall, or even onto a bed sheet that's pulled taut at the side of the house for your barbecues and that kind of thing. And you know, if you're the type of person who has a lot of summer parties, get your mates round, or you're big in your gaming and all your mates come round, that kind of thing, I don't think £1,200 a hell of a lot of money for the entertainment that you're going to get from this machine. And they're so reliable now. These DLP projectors at what they do, it'll last you a good few years as well in terms of being used. And it's built like a tank. I mean, it is plastic, but it's built to be handled, to be shoved in a bag, to be shoved in a cupboard and taken around with you. So yeah, there's a definite use case there, and taking that into consideration doing the review, I think it'll score quite nicely, to be honest, with that use case. So that's the BenQ TK800. For some reason I think a Terminator with 800, I don't know why. So let's wrap up hardware. It is the summer, Ed. What that normally equates to is when the sun comes out, you start hearing music everywhere. Because people like to turn their music up, and I guess, you know, the services which really benefit from that usage are streaming services. You've been looking at everything streaming wise the last few months. So summer's here, the sun's out, you want to blast some tunes, you're not sitting down and critically listening to vinyl, you just want some tunes in the background while you entertain at your barbecue. Which streaming service are you going to use? Right.
First and foremost, if you own a mobile phone, you need to go and have a look at which streaming service your mobile phone network provider is currently on good terms with. That, more than anything else, is where you would where you'd need to start looking, because over the years I've used all of them, as you say. At the moment, for me, this is going to be a summer of Deezer. Do I believe that Deezer is necessarily better than Spotify? Not really. Does Deezer come out of my data allowance? No. Does that mean I can use Deezer pretty much everywhere? Yes. So there you go. And thus, you know, when we've tested all of these services, and I know that you've listened to a large number of them as well, none of them are so far behind the others that you miss, you know, unless you've got magnificently exotic tastes in music, and, you know, far more exotic than anything I've ever listed as albums of the month or things like that. You just don't need to worry about it. The libraries are largely identical. So first and foremost, if you want to be using music on the move, just have a look at whichever one is going to be something which you can do in the most cost-effective way. Because you're on 3 now, aren't you, Phil?
I am, yes.
So, I mean, I know you don't really, you've never really troubled your data allowance as it is, but you would have 3. You'd have Deezer as part of your Go Binge. So if you really wanted to make despite having an enormous data allowance, if you wanted to preserve all of that, you could use Deezer whilst out and about, and it won't have any effect at all on your other data.
You've just said that, and I didn't even realise I got Deezer on my 3.
It's part of Go Binge, yes. Deezer and Netflix do not count as to your used data allowance. I didn't even realise that was the case. Yeah, I've got 30 gig, and I very rarely get anywhere close to using that on my mobile, to be honest. It's there because 3 do the thing where you can use your data anywhere in Europe and in the States. And I do a lot of things in the States, obviously with CES and that kind of thing. If I can use my data over there and I get my same allowance and it doesn't cost any more, that's mainly why I'm with 3. But when you're talking about streaming services, for me,
personally, I'm with Spotify, and Spotify and Tidal, and I use those because in terms of system integration and in terms of stuff like Apple CarPlay in the car and on my mobile, or using it in a second room on a second system and so on, I just find the way that Spotify is integrated into other products, and you just need to have your account open on those products, and you can switch between devices and so on. And like I say, in the car, you get the full interface through Apple CarPlay in the car with Spotify, and with Tidal now. Tidal's a new one on there, which I've been using the last couple of months. So those two services for me are the ones that I use most, and I'll probably say I use Spotify more because if I'm listening in the car, it's usually at a low volume anyway, so I don't need lossless.
No.
If I'm listening on the phone, I don't need lossless because I've just got a pair of earphones in if I'm out walking. And in a second room, I don't really need lossless either there because it's just for background music. So yeah, that's my usage case. Mark, do you use streaming services? Which ones, etc.?
Very, very rarely these days, I'm afraid. I tend to only use it through the PlayStation app, to have different tunes on whilst playing a game or something like that. And that's with Spotify. Can I just ask, with regards the kind of libraries of these services, Ed? You said they're all kind of broadly the same. So are there any kind of like high-profile artists? I know there was a kind of slew of people taking their stuff off Spotify.
There's always some holdouts. Now, there are some Tidal does have some exclusive content. As far as I can remember, they're the only people with the full Prince catalogue. Well, obviously, let me rephrase that. The released Prince catalogue. There are some very famous holdouts. Peter Gabriel I believe he's currently having discussions with Spotify to possibly allow some stuff on. But if you are a Peter Gabriel fan, the only service that can help you with that is Qobuz, because you can buy his albums from their store, and once you've done that, it unlocks them as part of the on-demand streaming as well. But to be honest, there's fewer than there used to be. There's always holdouts, but the thing is, they tend to be holdouts across every service. So if you are a huge fan of them, you're just not going to get them. You're going to need to buy them and physically add them to a library.
I was going to say there's not like a radically different payment model from one streaming service to the next. So they're
other than Qobuz's Sublime package things, which are done on an annual subscription rather than a monthly, and they are expensive. We've had this when I reviewed Sublime Plus. I pointed out it's the best streaming service platform that there is, but as Phil points out, integration wise, it's some way behind Spotify and Tidal, and it's a lot of money. And whether you necessarily need that. I mean, for the moment, as I say, I've got Deezer Chromecasting to the Naim, and the Naim has Spotify and Tidal on board. Tidal's integration, as I say, bundles with the Control app, and it works beautifully. And when I've got a bit of spare data on my allowance, I will use it because it's just such a joy and it sounds excellent. But the difference between Deezer over Chromecast and Tidal, and Spotify, nothing. And it all works in exactly the same way. So yeah, all very impressive.
Kaz, do you use streaming?
I get Amazon Music via Amazon Prime. I think it's not the full whack, so I don't have I don't pay for the.
It's only 2 million songs, isn't it? As opposed to the whole catalog.
It does me fine, and anything I really want, I buy it on iTunes, and I don't really spend that much on it. So if I want to spend money on 2 or 3 songs a month, like maximum, then I'll buy those on iTunes, and you can still play them through your Amazon account. So I don't really feel the need to get a full streaming service.
But I mean, as I say, a lot of people are using, really, if you're happy with whichever service you're using, there's no compelling reason to check. I mean, in terms of the hot ticket for the summer, they're all going to deliver the goods. We've had this conversation in the past. If you are looking for new content, Tidal's curated playlists will bring your attention to new material very effectively. But for really new, I mean, Spotify's Discover Weekly playlist is witchcraft, and even on a bad week, it will bring your attention to 2 songs which you will almost certainly add to your routine roster of things that you listen to.
Absolutely, that definitely works for me. Although the last few weeks, there's been some really weird stuff in there, but obviously I've listened to something and it's cottoned onto that and then thought, oh, he likes this, and whereas I maybe just liked the one track that I was listening to. But otherwise it's normally bang on. Yeah. So I guess what we're saying is, if it's for streaming, if it's for the summer, if it's for playing loud music while you're in the pool or having a barbecue or whatever, I don't know what your lifestyle is, even if you're listening in the car or whatever, the main ones, they're all much of a muchness, and it'll depend on really the devices that you're using and the way that you're going to use them in terms of what you're actually going to go for.
It's interesting. I've got Twitter open at the moment because I'm easily distracted, and it's I don't know. Obviously, it's further suggesting that these things are listening to you, but it's just put a promoted tweet from Spotify into my Twitter feed. 99p for 3 months of Spotify Premium. You can't argue if you're just looking for sounds for some summer sounds. You can't say fairer than that, really, can you? So
that's good.
There are always some cracking deals on the way, and again, Deezer is available to 3 customers on a free sub for 3 months or so.
And obviously, we're paying customers. This is not a promotion for free. We are
paying customers. I give 3 quite a lot of money for my iPad and my home broadband. But I know that Vodafone used to have a deal with Spotify. I'm sure they still do. So as I say, if you haven't got something on the go at the moment, you just need something hooked up at cost-effective rate. See what your mobile provider's doing, because they generally have a relationship with one of them.
Yeah. Okay, so that's hardware news for this week, and we'll be back in a sec with movie news and reviews. Okay, so moving on to movie news and reviews, and the review's going to be pretty short, actually. So Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, whatever. You kind of know what you're going to get going in. If you've seen Jurassic World, then you'll know some of the characters. If you've watched any Jurassic Park film, you'll know that there's a bad guy who's manipulating DNA to their advantage, and the good guys are trying to save the dinosaurs. That's exactly what happens in this one. It's almost like Solo in that it's competent, it gets the job done, it keeps your interest for the running time, but there's nothing new. There's nothing terribly exciting that goes on, and you've seen it all before, basically. And like I said, it's well done. The soundtrack's phenomenal. It'll make a brilliant demo disc. I have no doubt whatsoever about that. There's some nice cinematography in it. The effects hold up really well. Obviously they've nailed it now. They know what they're doing. But there's nothing particularly good. The bad guys weren't really that menacing. The plot was a bit okay, but then again, you're talking about a plot that involves dinosaurs, and dinosaurs existing, and that the world has somehow, become used to this fact and all the rest of it. So, if you're at a loose end, go and see it. But otherwise, you've probably seen it all before, and it really is just a rehash of everything that's gone before. And in no way does it even come close to the absolute classic that is Jurassic Park, and nothing ever will, because it's it was a seminal movie. It was a game changer when it came out in '93, and anything that's come out, I have got a soft spot for Lost World, but everything else that's come out after that has been much of a muchness, and nothing terribly original, and this is exactly the same.
But that's as much. Can you possibly capture the lightning in the bottle of the first one?
No, I don't think you can. And I think what needs to happen if this franchise is going to go on, and I thought they might do it when they rebooted with Jurassic World, is that it needs to go in another direction. It needs to, because the whole genetics, building a dinosaur, look, we've got dinosaurs, oh no, the park's gone wrong, or whatever, it's gone wrong, and now the dinosaurs are eating everybody, and we need to find a way to stop that. And there's always these political messages in there, like save the planet and saving life, and life finds a way, and all the rest of it. It's getting boring now. You've seen it all before, and it's just a rehash, basically. And it's competently done, and it's entertaining enough, and I'd probably score it about 6. 6.5 if I was being kind. But there's nothing that stands out and makes me want to go and see it again. Whereas even The Lost World, I went and seen that 3 times at the cinema. You know, I wanted to go and see it on the big screen because it was a spectacle and all the rest of it. This time around, you know, I think somebody mentioned in the comments that their son had turned around to them and said, haven't we seen this film? I think that kind of says it all, and I absolutely agree with that comment. You have seen all this before. You know where it's going. You know the geneticists are the bad guys, and you know the good guys are going to try and save the dinosaurs. And that's what you get. And I'm not spoiling the plot for anybody there because it's the same plot. It's just been regurgitated for how many movies now? 5. So, yeah. If you're at a loose end, go see it. It's entertaining enough. It's nothing spectacular. It's nothing fantastic. It's nothing you haven't seen before.
Do you feel? I mean, I have to say, I haven't seen this one yet. I saw the first Jurassic World. I felt that the choice of Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, I felt that they were relatively likable individuals.
Yes,
and I thought they were a redeeming factor. I mean, are they still delivering a reasonable? The
chemistry's still there. There's still the humour and the banter and so on. Although not as much this time around. There's the usual replaceable characters in this as well, and the sidekicks, and you know, you have fun with these types of movies because I think as soon as they start, you think, yeah, he's going to get it. Yeah, he's not going to last till the end credits. But it's so much of a muchness, and you've seen it all before that really it's. Did it need to get made? No. Is it competent? Yeah, I suppose. It's well done. But they've had lots of practice to do these things now. And they've been using the same script for the last God knows how long.
Well, there we go. That's a ringing endorsement.
So, anybody rushing out to see cinema to see this then?
It is telling that I am not, because I see a lot of movies. And the only one that I'm really looking forward to is Sicario, at the end of the month, Sicario 2. And on the way to that, in the post kind of Infinity War buzz, I things like Solo and Jurassic World, they are movies that I would have thought were made for me.
Yeah.
I love the Star Wars films, and I really enjoy the Jurassic Park films. But I can remember, you know, the 1993 Jurassic Park experience of going to the cinema, a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big thing, and it's telling that these movies, which I know they're for a new generation, but they are also for people like me. I'm just like, yeah, if I get around to it, and if not, then I'll see it on disc. And I was never that kind of person. And if I don't get to see it before Sicario comes out at the end of the month, then I know what film I'm going to see.
Yeah, I guess it's never going to come up against, you know, the impact that Jurassic Park had, because Jurassic Park had lots of firsts. I mean, CGI for a start. Although there wasn't as much CGI in the original film as people think. I mean, a lot of it was animatronics and puppets and that kind of thing. But, you know, you had that impact. DTS launched with Jurassic Park back in the day, 93. That was the first film that came out with a DTS digital soundtrack. You know, you had the score from John Williams, you had Steven Spielberg, probably at the height of his powers, and it's probably the last sort of real Spielberg film, you know, fantasy film from that era. It's probably the last, because he made Schindler's List the same year, back to back actually, and I don't think his films have been the same since then, since he made Schindler's List. So to me, it's one of the you know, Jurassic Park, it will always be one of the big movies of my life. It certainly, I went to see it 7 times at the cinema. I was obsessed with that movie when it first came out, and it's something that I've used as demo material all the way through my career. I've always used the T-Rex scene. I know it so well. I know that soundtrack inside out on so many different formats. So yeah, it's going to be a lot to even get close to that nowadays, because we're so used to CGI effects, and like I say, I mean, the effects in this are really, really good, but you've seen it all before. There's nothing new. There's no new technology. There's no new characters in this. They haven't taken it in any new direction. It's the same thing again. So
you sound broken. I don't know if this is the right time to admit it, but I always feel slightly guilty. I've never really quite understood the appeal of Jurassic Park. I don't know whether it's one of those that you just had to see on the big screen at the time.
I think there's an element of that.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same as like the original Star Wars and all the rest of it. There is that. It was such a change from what had gone before, and Jurassic Park was that. I mean, I watched it this week on 4K Blu-ray, and it still stands up well now. I mean, some of the effects look dated, but for the vast majority of that T-Rex scene, it's still like, it just seems so real.
It's very sparing use.
Yeah, and it's different techniques used all within the same scene. So some CGI, some's puppets, some's a full-scale model of the T-Rex head, and that. So, and it's just so well done. It is a masterpiece of filmmaking. Whereas this is paint by numbers, and it's disappointing that it's gotten to that point now. I mean, I'm more interested in seeing Meg.
Oh yeah, that looks phenomenal.
It does.
Jason Statham punching sharks the size of aircraft carriers. I mean, it looks fantastic.
Well, let's face it. Anything with Jason Statham in is a certain type of gold.
Yeah. And again, I got more out of Rampage than I did out of Jurassic World. And if you want big, silly CGI animals and The Rock, and something a bit different and over the top, that was more enjoyable than Jurassic World.
Are we suggesting that the future for the Jurassic franchise might be to tempt The Rock or Jason Statham or one of these other, or maybe it's Danny Dyer's time for some.
Is it going to end up like The Expendables versus dinosaurs?
I would pay to watch that. I'm not going to lie. I would just, as a crossover franchise, they can have my money now.
The future for this franchise is surely being a bit audacious and taking it the way of the old Planet of the Apes series, and eventually turning it into, like, or at least a portion of the world into a dinosaur realm. Completely change it. Set in the future where dinosaurs are actually ruling the earth again.
Could we have a creepy regenerated Charlton Heston?
I think that would be a good way that they could go, but no one would ever commit that. They'd never spend $250 million making a movie like that. But that's the kind of thing where people might walk out of it and go, well, I haven't seen that before, or I haven't seen anything quite like that, and I'm glad they went in that direction rather than they played it safe and basically did the last movie again.
Yeah, there's definitely something in that.
Yeah. Okay, so Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, 6 out of 10 from me. I think Sharuna scored it as an 8. So she obviously enjoyed it.
He likes dinosaurs.
Yeah. So there you go. 6 from me, 8 from Sharuna, and if you're at a loose end, it's competent enough. It does what you expect it to do. It's just paint by numbers Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movie. Right, so let's move to our movies editor, Kaz. What's coming out at the cinema this week, Kaz?
We've got Hereditary coming out, which is the directorial debut of Ari Aster, and it's a horror film, a haunted horror film. Which has got good buzz at the moment. I mean, see what the fans think when it's actually released. But I think Sharoon is catching a preview early, so hopefully we'll hear all about it very soon. But it's certainly something that's on people's radar. Gabriel Byrne and Toni Collette are headlining it.
They're calling it the new Exorcist or something. Some of the taglines, aren't they? Which is, that's big praise. There's a lot to live up to.
I think that when they say stuff like that, it really lends itself towards being pure disappointment.
Yeah,
I'm hoping it's kind of along the lines of A Quiet Place, because that was an excellent little gem. But if they'd called A Quiet Place like The New Aliens or The New Alien, I would have surely been disappointed. So I think that they're bigging it up a bit too much. I don't know whether it'll be all that, but it sounds like a nice new horror, and it certainly sounds like a pretty good for a directorial debut. So that's coming out this week at the cinema.
Okay.
And not much else out, I don't think, at the moment. All the big players are still hitting hard. So
it's still doing good business, aren't they, at the cinema? So apart from Solo, and obviously Jurassic World was out this week, so they're going to give that some room. So Heredity's out. I think I'll pass because I'm a bit like Mark. I'm not a big horror fan. I don't like other people seeing me jump in the cinema.
I've just thought about it, guys. The actual crossover that Jurassic World needs is Fast and the Furious. Because cars and dinosaurs, what's not to like? It's just perfect in every single way, and I'm prepared to flesh out a tentative script if any of the studios want to get in touch with me.
Okay, well, I'm sure Netflix might be interested in that one. Right, Blu-rays this week. So if anybody's interested, I've got Saving Private Ryan and Die Hard on 4K Ultra HD. While I was out at the cinema last night, I saw them in HMV and bought them. So I'm looking forward to Saving Private Ryan. I think that'll be something rather special to see on. But if people want to buy Blu-rays or 4K Blu-rays this week, Kaz, what can they buy?
Well, Criterion is still churning out some niche classics, including Mishima, which is a Paul Schrader film. Now, no one was probably heard of this, but Schrader's the guy who wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and directed a few minor gems back in the 80s. And he did this semi-personal Japanese tale, Mishima, which has got really rave reviews, and Criterion have picked it up and releasing it. It'll probably be one of their stronger releases at the moment because they are going up and down with what they choose. There isn't actually a huge amount coming out after the bevy of 4K releases we've had of classics like you mentioned, Die Hard, Saving Private Ryan, and Matrix. So I think it's a little bit quiet at the moment.
Good. The bank accounts can have a bit of a break, basically.
Well, until you hear about Black Panther.
Yeah,
on 4K.
That's a definite purchase.
Yeah, I mean, that was phenomenal at the cinema, and I can't see anyone not lapping it up, but I can see probably another 6 months of people complaining about how the soundtrack is mixed too low, which it almost certainly is, because it's going to be the same as the US release, which has already been reflected upon quite animatedly by forumites as being typical Disney standard. Now, I haven't got the disc yet, but I would think that it's likely to fall into the same category, hopefully, as Last Jedi, which is that you turn it up louder. And
because it's still got the full dynamic range. It's just
mixed low.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. I mean, people are hoping it's not another Ragnarok, so we'll have to see how that goes. It's got to be a must-have purchase. I mean, it's phenomenal that Marvel can do Black Panther and Infinity War in the same year and do such great business. It is I think it was the 18th movie maybe they did, and it's very fresh, very, very different, and it's well worth checking out.
Oh.
Why on earth did my laptop have to make that sound? Sorry.
Somebody's giving you a call, that's why.
Yeah, I know, but how do I turn that off without turning you guys off?
Just ignore it.
Right, hang on.
So once you get your laptop sorted out, there's also another classic coming to 4K UHD Blu-ray, and I've actually decided not to get it at the minute because I think it'll turn up in the 2 for £30 offers that are going around at the minute eventually, and that's Forrest Gump. I went for Saving Private Ryan because of the soundtrack, because of the film. I love the film, and Forrest Gump, I like the film, but it can wait. It's one of these classics that I will pick up on 4K Blu-ray, but I'll get it in one of the sales when it's a bit cheaper.
Well, that's good to know. I haven't bought a film in quite a while. I don't actually have a disc player of any description here at the moment.
Yeah, well, why would you buy films if you haven't got a disc player? So.
Exactly.
Is it Kaz? Are you still there?
Yes, I think that Forrest Gump is a 2 for 30, crying out for a 2 for 30. But I mean, it's all up to what people really want to pick up. I mean, if there's a little bit of a Tom Hanks binge going on, particularly if you imported the Post from the States with that, and Saving Private Ryan and Forrest Gump. I mean, you're on a Tom Hanks roll. in 4K. So, but I don't think that it necessarily is going to be one that I'm itching to get in the same way as The Matrix and, the Mission Impossible quintet that's coming out just in time for the new Fallout. So I think that's gonna get absorbed in the shadows of things like Black Panther and everything else good coming out.
Yeah.
We're still going to cover it though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But personally, it's one of those that can wait a little while. It's not going to go anywhere, and I'll pick it up in the sales. So any news on Braveheart for the UK yet, Kaz?
No, I have no idea why this hasn't happened. I seem to vaguely remember having to import the US Blu-ray back in the day before it got a UK Blu-ray release. But I don't know why. We've had The Patriot, which was normally kind of released around the same time as Braveheart, even though they're completely different. They kind of work as a... They're both
from the Professor Mel Gibson School of Alternative History.
Yeah, but I mean, he only directed one of them. But they're kind of nice companion pieces, completely different but completely good companion pieces. But Braveheart is out in the States on 4K, and there's no news about it getting a UK release. So I'm not sure where it's got lost in the ether. But I would think that whilst I would like to see it in 4K, it's another one of those titles that when they get around to giving it to us in the UK, I'll get it. It's not one I'm going to import.
Yeah, okay. As long as it's no because it's rainy. Because I think that was Steve's bad cinematography. It was overcast and raining.
I've heard that the disc looks really good. People giving it the kind of hyperbole of it's one of the most faithful and natural looking 4Ks ever, which is probably an excuse for not being able to see any HDR. But I mean, I think it's got reviewed as looking really good.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, but hopefully it will come out in the UK because I really don't want to be paying over the odds for a US import. Right, so just to wrap up on the on what's coming up and so on, you've been looking at a lot of the streaming service stuff recently, Kaz. So anything interesting coming up there?
Well, we've got Goliath Season 2 coming out on Amazon. Now, Goliath, for those who don't know, is just another sort of seemingly conventional underdog story. It's David and Goliath of a down-and-out lawyer who takes on a big corporation and there's lots of conspiracies. I mean, it seems all by the book until you throw Billy Bob Thornton, uncensored, drunk, into the mix, and it becomes just a phenomenal showcase for his talents. It's just worth watching for Billy Bob Thornton. And the least expected thing, they commissioned a second season of getting him drunk and having him rant. I mean, sometimes he just lands up on the beach talking to bums and you wonder whether they're outtakes shot after the actual day's filming's gone because he's just drunk on a beach swearing at some homeless guys. And I think it's very, very watchable. And it's Billy Bob Thornton. You can't really go wrong there. There's also a new Netflix production, The Angel. I mean, Netflix has been a bit hit and miss with when these Netflix originals are coming out. They seem to drop them at a whim. So I don't know whether this will come out. I don't know where the last one went, which was, I think, Hold the Dark. And I don't know where they'll land. What I do know is that we've just had the finale for Sense8. For anyone who likes the Wachowskis and likes the Wachowskis even at their most inaccessible, the finale to their Netflix TV series has just aired, and that's worth checking out on Netflix. And I do know that there's a whole roster of new things coming out. The question is just when, because all these streaming services are really very cagey about when they're going to release stuff.
Do you think it's like they want people to kind of keep tuning in, so to speak, rather than just kind of when you've got an established catalogue of things, rather than like picking up your TV remote and opening the EPG, if you already know what's there, perhaps there's kind of that temptation for people not to bother opening the app. Whereas if there's something that could drop at any moment, it gets people to keep on seeing if anything new has arrived.
I kind of agree with you, but are so bad on some of their releases that even when they're released, on the day they're released, you have to go in and search for them by name to find them. So zero promotion has got to have a negative effect. I think an element of buzz isn't a bad idea. Get people anticipating these things. I mean, I can see why things like, for example, Cloverfield Paradox was just dropped into oblivion because they're just bad. But a lot of the productions deserved a bit more fanfare. I mean, when Annihilation got picked up by Netflix, everybody knew about it, but Netflix wasn't really talking about it. And then, one morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, it's there. But you have to search for it. You have to refresh your browser, exit, log in again, and then search for it. Why make it that hard to see something that they should celebrate? Because it's a reason people would subscribe to Netflix. So I agree with you that they want to have fresh content and they want to keep it fresh. But there's a balancing act between spending every day on Twitter and promoting all of these things and making it so hard for people to watch it, even when they already know about it.
Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up what's coming up this week. So there's a subject that's been on the running order for a few weeks and we've never gotten around to actually talking about it. So let's do that this week. We'll do it quickly. But it's
like it's been on the subs bench for all season.
He's getting the last 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah, it's getting an injury time.
Being substituted, 96th minute.
But what are the best and worst films based on actual events? So obviously this rules out Jurassic Park. So we're looking at things that are based on real events. Now, I guess the thing that you have to point out here, the caveats to this, is that everything is dramatised. If it's made into a Hollywood film, there is quite a bit of sanitisation in some of the subjects that do get covered, and I guess you just got to accept that that's going to be the case. So when we say based on real events, they're not actual historically correct, or they may have some dramatisation, or been sanitised or whatever, or from a certain point of view.
Are you saying they embellished the Battle of Thermopylae in 300?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. Nobody was there to tell. So just to get the conversation going, I'm going to drop a few and then we can see what the other guys add to this. So I've just put a quick list together of the ones off the top of my head that are personal favourites of mine, on films that I have enjoyed that were based on true events, real events, or bit dramatised. So Titanic, obviously. The whole thing about Rose and all the rest of it, that was all made up, but of course the whole Titanic disaster did happen, and it was based on eyewitness evidence that was given and so on. So they were trying to be as realistic and as true as they could be for that one. So that was, I think, a good one. Schindler's List, I don't think there's any arguing with that one. Catch Me If You Can, I really enjoyed that one. Again, that's three Spielbergs together, because I've also put Saving Private Ryan, which was actually based on the Nyland brothers from World War II. I had to do some research into that, so I didn't realise it was actually based on actual brothers. So there you go. Obviously a lot of dramatisation in that, but it was based obviously on the D-Day landings and on these brothers. Ed Wood, that was dramatised. But again, it's one of these films, and Apollo 13 and Black Hawk Down. So that's my list there of stuff that I've really enjoyed based on real events. Anybody going to add to the list?
Raging Bull.
Yes.
Raging Bull.
Okay.
I'd probably stick things like Dunkirk on there, and what with the Post recently, it reminds me of All the President's Men, Watergate. But I mean, Raging Bull is real events and a fantastic biopic. I mean, it's how to do a movie like that. But I did do a little research into this one, because I didn't actually realize some of the movies that I least expected that I love that are based on real events. French Connection is apparently based on real detectives, and
he appeared in the film. I think.
Yeah, I didn't realise that. So that's that's great. And little ones that I didn't really think of as associated, even though it's in the name. Things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, even though it seems so maybe fictional in the way it's stylized. It's based on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and so I think that those are some of my big hitters probably there. The more fun ones though are got to be the ones that are bad.
Yes, I would say another vote for Apollo 13. I still regard it as Ron Howard's best work.
Yep.
It's just really, in so much it helps that the story itself is so extraordinary. But nonetheless, I think it's a cracking cast and it's done beautifully. So that's definitely there.
I mean, it's like Titanic in that you know how these events end, but there's still the dramatization. There's still there's still enough emotion in there and drama and so on that it keeps you hooked for the running time.
One that's just cropped up because I had completely forgotten about it. And as you say, actually, it is toned down from actual events. Is Papillon, which is one of my favourite Steve McQueen films, and it's just incredible, absolutely incredible film.
I think that's a really underrated Steve McQueen film. Dustin Hoffman as well, and I think it's
phenomenal.
It's phenomenally bad news that it's being remade with Charlie Hunnam and I can't remember the guy from Mr. Robot. I just don't get why they would remake a movie like that.
I'm just going to ignore it. I know that's not the exact policy of these things, but I am, because the original is perfection and it doesn't need to be adjusted in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Trying to see what else there is. There's lots and lots.
Zero Dark 30.
You see, I didn't enjoy that. It's an impressive piece of filmmaking, but I don't necessarily regard it as particularly entertaining. But
Mr. Botwright, you got any, Tad?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously there's a huge difference between inspired by, kind of things that might have happened and based on real events. In the kind of inspired by category, you generally anything kind of action. You've got your guilty pleasures like Tombstone or The Untouchables, that kind of thing, which plays very fast and loose with anything that might actually have happened. But in terms of based on real events, I think honourable mention 24-Hour Party People in the comedy category, because it fits perfectly with the idea of Tony Wilson, between the truth and the legend, go with the legend. And I always just think that it's such a kind of weird meta movie in itself, and it just, Steve Coogan was perfect as Tony.
He was. It was absolutely brilliant. And that, again, I think it's a really, really good movie to pick out, because again, it's underrated, and it's one that's probably passed a lot of people by.
One that has just popped up, because it is based quite considerably on his actual life, is Boogie Nights. It's a good film. It was based on John, what's his face, the porn star, John Holmes.
That's the guy. Yeah. Again, one of my favourite movies, all-time favourite movies. That it's sensationally good.
So yeah, but no, I think Mark's right. It's bad ones, and can I go straight in? For me, one of the Nadirs, which is Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, but you see that works, doesn't it, as pure Hollywood kind of tosh? Because it's so bad, it's good, isn't it? The only way that you
can use Pearl Harbor and works is to ensure that the word "doesn't" is somewhere in there as well. It manages to take one of the most dramatic and extraordinary events of the 20th century and somehow make it a side event to just general drivel. I hate it. It is how not to do it. And then in a similar vein, for different reasons, the US campaign in the Solomon Islands, specifically Guadalcanal, is crying out for a thoroughly, thoroughly decent film to be made of it, because it's an extraordinary campaign. Instead, we got The Thin Red Line, which is shit.
Oh. End on a controversial note.
I can
be clear. Let me be clear about this. I hate all of Terrence Malick's work. This whole tone poem business is.
If you don't like Terrence Malick, what did you think you were going to get from a 3-hour war film by Terrence Malick?
As I say, as a campaign, Guadalcanal is it. you wouldn't need to embellish anything to create one of the most visceral war films ever made.
See, I'm going to be equally controversial and say that I thought Thin Red Line was better than Saving Private Ryan.
Oh,
yes.
And I enjoyed Saving Private Ryan, and I don't think many war films capture the landing or anything like that as viscerally. But Thin Red Line is a reflection on war, which hasn't been done in any other war movie. It is, as you say, it's a tone poem, and so you feel things. And I think it does it superbly. Malick has definitely disappeared up a place that he shouldn't have disappeared up to, but he's done so over the course of his last few terrible movies. Back in the day, I mean, Thin Red Line, after 20 years, I think he spent in the not making films, he came up with Thin Red Line. It was robbed of Oscars. It was robbed of limelight because it was released in the wake of Saving Private Ryan, and everyone jumped on the Tom Hanks Spielberg bandwagon, which is fine. It's a great movie, but they neglected what is for me a masterpiece.
I think my specific dislike of it comes from the fact that it is a gigantic missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted that story to be told in the style of Saving Private Ryan,
I don't want it necessarily told in the set of Saving Private Ryan, but there is, in a historical sense, it was an extraordinary and in some ways unparalleled piece of campaigning and military brutality.
Is this where your kind of PhD in war comes out, and you're sat watching there going, historically inaccurate?
Don't get it's weird because the entire Pacific campaign in general has fewer truly standout films than you might expect. I mean,
can I just say, Ed, this is why I do believe if you know a lot about a subject, never go and watch a film about it.
There is something to be said.
It will always disappoint you. I learned that as an early age when I went to see Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. My mum took me to see it, and she complained, saying those chickens weren't around in England at the time. And at that point, I just thought, right, no, I'm done with this.
Could I just say honourable mention for Pacific films that do get it absolutely right is the double whammy of Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, which I think do more than justice to an equally landmark and savage piece of history. I think they do it fantastically well. So it's not like I have a downer on everything that's come out.
They kind of did. I think that kind of bookend of films kind of did what Tora was trying to do.
Yes.
Kind of create that even-handed approach to both sides, and just kind of reflect the kind of soldier's view of it rather than the grand kind of overarching themes of nations.
And one that has just popped up, if we're doing war films, that I'd completely forgotten about and shouldn't have done, is Downfall, because I think that's absolutely outstanding.
Yes. And again, you're dealing with something there that's been documented a lot. I think there's, it's very tough. I mean, we mentioned sporting films earlier with Raging Bull, but Rush as well, because there you're dealing with something that's very recent history and something that's, was documented with cameras that you've got so much footage of, and people involved are then helping out with the film as well. So that's a tricky thing to kind of to pull off, because then you can't really embellish too much.
And the power of a movie like that as well, because I knew nothing about that story. I'm not an F1 fan, so I didn't know about the events. But now that I do, it's given me an interest in that subject. So there was things like, I'll need to find out more, and I've watched a couple of documentaries based on the same season now because of what the film piqued my interest. And again, it's another Ron Howard film we're talking about there.
Yeah, it would appear if you want a biopic, if you want a biopic done, if you want a historical piece done, he's your man. Whether Solo exactly fitted into that category.
Well, I'll tell you what.
It's a historical film, remember?
Yeah. I'm just so glad nobody's mentioned Braveheart. That is such hokum. It's thoroughly
entertaining, and that one I do agree with Kaz. It goes out the other end, and it's tremendously watchable.
Yes, it is. It's great fun, but it's got nothing to do with any of the characters that actually existed.
What's quite peculiar though with that, it has an odd spin-off, because it then Mel Gibson, having played about with history in, how should we say, a creative way a couple of times, has then gone on to make some really very well observed historical films. We Were Soldiers is a good film, and it's pretty down the line as to what actually happened. And Hacksaw Ridge, a little bit of embellishment here and there, but again, it's a good film and it's pretty accurate. It's just unfortunately he sort of blotted his copybook in terms of how much we trust. This is the kind of like
dirty little secret of Mel Gibson's life, is that he's actually a really good director. Apocalypto is fantastic. You know, I watched that again the other day, and it's phenomenal. You know.
I think Braveheart and his other one, The Patriot, which he didn't direct, but has similar themes. He spent a little bit too much time trying to make proper moustache twirling villains out of the British, and I'm not sure that did his storytelling any good. I mean, I recently reviewed The Patriot on 4K, and it's difficult because he needed bad guys, but he makes it very, very black and white.
He does,
and it isn't at all. And it's a shame, because if you strip that out of it, it's actually a really enjoyable kind of period romp. And
it's worth it just for that scene where that cannonball rolls down the ground, along the ground, takes that bloke's leg off. That's just magnificent, right there.
And on that leg missing note, I think that's enough for this week. My thanks to Kaz Harlow.
Must go faster.
Ed Selley.
I've decided not to endorse your park.
And Mark Botwright.
Thanks, Dad.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.